the way the show was constructed, let's say, most of the works were created around one other work, and I was indeed worried more about the whole show and to have a more coherent sort of not only aesthetic, but I was also trying to build some kind of specific atmosphere that will probably, it wouldn't become a work, but it will help all the other works. So it wasn't conceived as any kind of installation or anything. This was more how to like make one work and then build out of it. The story of Neustern is a fictional story that was published in '69 in a magazine called Art News. The original text is some kind of ironic text, some sort of critique of early conceptual art, and in order to do that, the writer created this sort of genius character that had several problems in his persona, and that's precisely what sort of made his work interesting in a way. And so I sort of took that fictional character out of that sort of critical text and tried to take it as if it was real and try to imagine what would be the real relevance of that work today. I mean, the fact that he didn't want to create images, the fact that he was interested in forgetting about his own work because he had some kind of memory problem. I mean, all those little things could be really more interesting now. And I really think that the real challenge was how to make something believable and serious. I mean, in a way, kind of end up quite poetic, but out of this sort of very critical text, which is a very, really, really interesting text. In a way, this show is sort of my own take on it. How to do almost unnoticeable gestures that when they take sort of a life of its own, I mean, they will reflect a specific meaning, which is what I might be interested in the beginning, but hopefully they sort of by the passing of people and by the fact that they sort of go from one thing onto the other and they become more sort of a story or information, I think it sort of start grabbing a bunch of stories and things around it that could sort of lead to a more expanded thing. And not that I want to sort of claim that, you know, the artist should be only the initiator of that small gesture, but I like this idea that work should have its own life, and that's sort of precisely one of the reasons why I sort of try to go back to like other artist stories and try to figure out what those things that might come out of that small gesture might be interesting today, or might be interesting to me, and then maybe for somebody else. The show, in a way, that's I think sort of one of the ideas why it's called a solo exhibition, is that this whole show could also be some kind of collective show. Like there are several works that are somehow referenced here, even though they are here just in a very sort of slightly suggestion, but then you could think about it that way. And I just wanted to say that just to sort of start by the one work that I think is the only one that sort of becomes a more personal story, which is the scratch slides that are projected there. As I said before, all those works sort of try to go out of what I thought was one of the most relevant thing of the story of Neustern. So that work of the slide, it's sort of my personal take on how to react to that work, basically. It's a very simple thing which intends to create an image without necessarily being totally aware of it. So the way that I sort of solve it was by getting a small piece of film and just having it in my pocket, so that whatever activity I was doing, it was somehow being documented by the scratch of this piece of film. And so at the end, what I just did is I keep it for a month in the pocket, and then I just put it in a slide mount and projected it as some kind of story in a way. I mean, the slide projectors somehow have helped me to sort of create a little bit of a cinematic structure. I think by the fact that I wanted to put that thing on the projector, it sort of also sort of could imply that there is something happening, that there is some time involved in this thing, even though it's a static image. That film is a collection of dates that have been shown on film, or on films that I've seen. So in relation to Onkawara, I wanted to think that those dates, their meaning is not only created because what they could mean to people, but more to what could have happened in those days, and sort of thinking that if that was on a film, that maybe it is a date that cares for somebody. It's a film that is about a lot of stories that I've seen, that I've heard, but at the same time, it's something that could be something different for a lot of people. The work is about how to create something by undoing it, and how undoing also creates something. So in a way, I conceived the piece very specifically as some sort of introduction to the show. Like from the beginning, it had this specific function to be almost like an overall, the show sort of spatial and almost as well cinematic sense. I mean, what the work is recording it of somebody erasing a paper. And of course it's related to the work that Rauschenberg did, which was erasing the Kooning drawing. And the way sort of I started to think about the work was that I wanted to create some sort of documentary about the fact that it took him 1 month to erase that drawing and all the stories behind. The real question was how to build an atmospheric story out of this simple gesture without representing it with people or with some specific images. So it ended up being this sound piece, which is not only the reenactment of that fact, but that it's actually just a sound that I bought out of a sound effects library. I mean, in a way, that's the only story that is in this show that is grounded in a more specific, real fact. And in a way, one of the things that I'm interested in this whole thing is to sort of relativize, if that's the word, those kind of stories. And, you know, we don't know, maybe it didn't never really happen, or, you know, maybe it's all fiction, even if the paper exists, maybe he didn't spend a month. But those are the things that I am interested in, and that could sort of imply a more complex relationship to small gestures.